And we are live. Welcome back to another Mecca Moments here on the Mecca of Banter podcast. I am tonight's host, Henry Wind. You can find me on Twitter at Henry Wind. Normally, I'd start off this series with it's a great day to be a Manchester United fan, but we're not here to talk about Manchester United. No. We are
Thank
here to
God.
talk about the one and only St. Louis City SC in the MLS in the STL. We have a great episode tonight. We got the three of us, Connor Dobry, Andy Hoover. How are you two fellas feeling tonight?
I'm
Good
excited to
day.
be on the same squad.
It's
For
cool.
for those that have listened to the last pod, it was a very controversial episode. The banter was fantastic, and this one we're all on the same side, so we can really sort of dive into what was a great weekend and the excitement that's to come.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we hit on it a little bit in the pod, but we had so much fun. I had so much fun. Anytime we're doing St. Louis stuff and they've got streets shut down, it usually makes for a pretty good event. And it just happened to be the sport that we know and love so well. So happy
I
to be
will
here.
say it took like everything in my body when we recorded last and we started talking about City like a little bit. It took everything for me just not to go like all the way in because I was so excited to
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah.
It is funny. Okay, so I want to give before we dive into the weekend, it is funny how much our mindset on this team has changed in the last 2 weeks. So if you got a peek behind the curtain to our text thread 2 weeks ago prior to the Austin game, we have Connor Dobry not even knowing how the MLS works, asking questions about rosters, and now after 180 minutes, we're all the way in. We're all the way in. So excited to talk about it. Sold. So as you have heard, St. Louis hosted their very first ever MLS game this past weekend. And typically when St. Louis does get together for sports, they do it well. We've luckily in our lifetime seen quite a few great sports teams come through this city. And I think that this MLS team is going to be the future of it. So starting off with the pre-game block party and pre-game rally. Who give us your thoughts on that Friday night? Tell us a little bit what happened and give us the behind the scenes, man.
Young Metro 3 times is what happened. St. Louis got the man, the myth, Young Metro Boomin, to come out and just do a DJ set. So they basically released it like a week before Friday, and the tickets were free. You just had to reserve them on StubHub through the app, and it was Young Metro Boomin with Anderson .Paak and his DJ persona, DJ Pee Wee, which was electric. Played an all vinyl set. He had I think he had 4 travel cases of vinyls behind him, and he just kept going behind, grabbing one, flipping one, mixing in. It was great. They both played a decent amount of Nelly, which I'm sure went over really well, which did go over really well. It was a really well organized event. It went over way better than I thought. I kept telling everyone that I was, that when I said I was going, I was like, I have no idea what to expect. Genuinely no clue. Couldn't tell you at all in the slightest what's going to be there. They had food trucks lined up. Those same food trucks are lined up the next day. But yeah, I mean, Metro played his greatest and best, and everyone kind of just vibed and had some drinks, and it was a really good time. And it was cool to see St. Louis City kind of extend the hand a little bit in a direction that a lot of people probably wouldn't know to go with the soccer team, right? Like there were a lot of people at that event that had not anticipated or ever probably planned on going to a soccer event. So it was cool to see, all sorts of different types of people. It was really fun. I had a really good time, and it led hard into the next day, which we can step into.
Yeah, the next day brought us what they officially called it is the block party. They for those of you that either haven't been down to the stadium or maybe don't even live in St. Louis, where the stadium was built was it's kind of it's downtown, but kind of a little bit of a forgotten area of downtown, like just something that we hadn't seen a lot of newness in that area of downtown in a while. And so I think the very first thing that I noticed when I was driving down there was just like how many like either revamps to businesses have come. Like Maggie O's, one of the big bars down there, has gotten some like great rebuilding over the last 2 years because of the stadium. The whole stadium front is beautiful. There's a huge landing area where the stadium is, but they basically shut down all of the surrounding roads for this pre-game block party. And like Andy said, tons of vendors, tons of drinks, and tons of porta potties for people needing them. Dobes, you had yourself a day at the block party. What was your viewpoint on this?
This past Saturday was one of those days, like the Monday the week before. It's kind of like you're already looking forward to it a little bit. And as the days go by and you check the weather, and the weather's supposed to be 65 degrees and sunny for the first time this year, or for at least for the first time in a while. It's one of those where you just have to fully commit. First ever game in St. Louis, and boy did I commit. The whole block party setup was, first off, I don't know what to expect. Like, I don't know if it's going to be like Blues games where it's a few people down there, everybody's kind of drinking randomly. But the setup they had at Maggie's, to where they closed down the parking lot. The street was closed there for a while, to where it was more just like literally one giant block party where everybody was sort of intermingling. Was like, that was awesome to me. It wasn't like everybody was kind of separated off, to where like all of the different people you got to see, obviously us three being from St. Louis, all the different people we got to see, all there sort of united, drinking, having an absolute blast, music blaring, like perfect weather. Like, you almost couldn't have envisioned a better day to have that happen, and a better result in what came in the game.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so fun. I mean, I wish I could see it from like an overhead view of like how big
Yeah,
that
a
area
cool
is, but
picture.
shutting down those
Mhm.
streets. And then if you think like the vendors were lined up against like the length of the stadium, and they shut down that street too. So that's tons and tons and tons of people all able to intermingle wherever they want to. And I think that that's another good point, Dobes, of, sometimes with like Cardinals games or Blues games, people are a little bit more sectioned out, and like you don't really intermingle like that. But with this, everyone was just a melting pot. It was funny, like just to go back to something that, Andy, you said last night, and Dobes, you just said a little bit ago, but like everyone's on the same side here, which like,
For once.
yeah,
Yeah.
I saw so many like of our like people that we know that I know are like Liverpool fans or Arsenal fans. Like the first thing that I want to do is talk shit to them, but I'm like, we're kind of boys tonight. Like
We're
we're kind
here.
of like we're on the same we're on the same page. So I think
Uh,
that was super fun.
and it's like when it's just not something that we've ever been able to do before. We're like, we've got a soccer team now that we are geographically tied to because home city, home area. And we're not in a neighborhood of England, and we're never gonna be in a neighborhood of England, and we're never gonna get to walk down the street and go to the pub with our friends because we've lived in this neighborhood for forever, and then go banter some away fans in a stadium. That's not something that we've ever been able to do.
Yeah.
And that was the closest that I've felt that I've ever been to having something to me, like true to me and who I was and where I lived. Like, I'm never going to be Tottenham Hotspur. I've never lived in London. I'm never going to be that guy. And that's not, I don't want to be. The English can keep it. That's cool. But it like, that is what I felt I've missed out on from watching English soccer and watching just the culture of European soccer in general, and even South American and stuff too. It's like, I've never had that sort of congregation moment where we're all
Yeah.
just, there's one team, there's one result today. That just is what it was going to be. That was maybe the coolest part to me, was just how in sync everyone was about everything. It was so fun.
I think, yeah. And to kind of piggyback off that, like, I've been a Cardinals fan, been to hundreds, if not thousands, of Cardinals games. I've been an absolute diehard Blues fan, been to hundreds of thousands of Blues games. But I'm not a baseball guy. I'm not a hockey guy. Like, and for the first time, like the sport that, like, obviously all three of us probably care about more than just about anything. And then to have that in your home city, where there's actually that like interpersonal connection, where it's like uncles from different generations are coming together, old coaches, old friends that like you've united with in soccer, all sort of together at the same thing, is like something that, like, just like Hoove said, it's something you never thought we'd kind of get to experience every year growing up. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, we all support your own different clubs. We support the Cardinals. We support the Blues. We had the Rams for a while. But now it's like we actually have the sport that we all care about in the same city, like at almost, I would say, like the perfect age for us to get a team to where like we're
Yeah.
all old enough to like own season tickets and kind of do this the right way to where we got it set up. And I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, it feels so St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Big
know, and
time.
it might be like a weird thing to say, but I've lived a lot of places in my life, and I've been a lot of places as an adult, and it's not unique gatherings of people with alcohol and like nice weather. That's like not unique to St. Louis, but for what it was, it just felt like it was ours. Like you said, it was like our block party. It was like our homecoming.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, Dubs. Like seeing a bunch of old coaches and a bunch
That's
of
what I
old
mean.
teammates that
Like,
it was so funny. It was like, I remember when Paige, my girlfriend, got there like a little bit later than us. I saw her and I was just like, I can't even tell you how many people I've
yeah.
seen that I've like played against, that I've played with, that I've played for, all here to do this common thing,
Mhm.
which is really neat and super special. I did think that it was funny. Um, St. Louis does have to a little bit start talking to each other about like event planning, because I think there was like a Blues game that night. Allen Iverson was in town that night. Like the City game was that night. I was like, we got to figure that out, because I think downtown traffic flow is going to stop for a little bit. But the pregame was super special.
Yeah. It was like seeing old coaches and like it's almost one of those things where it's like you want to like catch up. How's life? How's your job? And like literally the words that come out of your mouth are like, how cool is this? Like literally, I would see coaches and the first thing is like, did you ever think this would fucking happen? And
Mhm.
it's just that
Yeah.
like, nope, like I never thought we'd be here. It's every single person you saw was the same exact thing. It was like he didn't catch up, he didn't say anything about life. It's like, how fucking cool is this? This is going on right now. And it was just
Yeah.
over and over again.
So what did it feel like for you guys, like, you know, after the block party, as we like made our way into the stadium itself, like when you crossed through that like threshold where you like scanned your tickets and all that, and then you made it in? What did that feel like for you guys?
Dude, I mean, not pretty emotional. Yeah, no, it was pretty
Yeah, I could have
emotional.
cried, bro.
Like
I was like, hell
I
yeah.
could have. And I saw my sister later in the game too, and she said the same thing to my parents that informed me tonight. They're like, yeah, she thought you were gonna cry, like to her. I was like, yeah, yeah, maybe. We walked in, and the first thing you did was walk straight to the view of the pitch, and like I
Mhm.
was there with my buddy Hornsey, and like I like hugged him. I was like, dude, that we did it. Like this is it. This is about to actually happen. And like Dobes and I were just like, and Dan were just like, let's just take a lap. Let's just go start walking around.
Yeah.
Like I want to. Everyone was just buzzing, absolutely
Mhm.
buzzing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that view when you walk in and you see the
Oh
pitch, yeah, I mean, like I have goosebumps right now thinking
yeah,
about it. You know, there's not a bad seat in the house, and certainly there's not a bad vantage point either. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. The like walking in there, I think like one of the coolest moments for me the entire game was the fact that like last minute I get to go to the game with my three uncles. All three like grew up playing soccer in St. Louis. All three never thought this would happen. And so like I literally got to my seats like right as everything started and like literally seeing all three of them giving them like the biggest hug in the world and all of them being like let's fucking go was like the most full circle and cool moment to just like it was like all right here we go and then the game started and the tifo happened and it was just like one thing after another where like I could not stop smiling the entire night.
yeah.
The
It's exactly how
Yeah.
I feel.
the TIFO thing is pretty cool. So for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, go on the YouTube. It stows its background right now. But TIFO is a massive part of the stadium environment in soccer all across the world. Typically, supporter sections will get these massive, massive, massive banners, and a lot of them are like hand painted or like hand woven that they spread out across the entire supporter section. And every big club in the entire world has TIFO as part of their pregame ritual ritual, and St. Louis did it right. In the supporter section, there were 2 massive ones that was actually created by our supporter section that, right before the game, they rolled it down and I was actually trapped underneath it. So I was one of the people holding it up and like making it, go crazy. But from your guys' viewpoint, like how beautiful was it? How gorgeous was it to look at?
It was really cool, and they laid out, they did their placards type thing all around the rest of the stadium, and it was just red, and then there were squiggle lines through it for the flag of St. Louis, and then my end said all for city in white on certain seats. So like I have videos on my phone where all you can see are like these like placards, like everyone's holding them up as you're supposed to be. And like my videos, I'm trying to like take a panorama of the stadium and I'm just getting blocked by these signs. That it looked really good. And I'd heard that I think we have TIFO rigging in the stadium, or it's not yet
Mm.
installed. So I think they saw a little bit of adversity when they realized they weren't going to be able to hoist it actually up in front, and they were just going to have to unroll it down. But that's some roll with the punches, bro. It looked amazing. Like
It
it
worked.
looked maybe
It was,
even
yeah,
cooler
it
that
was
you guys
incredible.
were punching underneath it.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
My seats were like right above you, Hen, all the way to like the right side of the supporter section. Excuse me, the left side if you're looking at it. So I could see the all for city. I could see the little tifo come down, and the view of just everybody holding it up was like the video. It's my background now on my phone because it's such a cool photo. It was one of those where like I wasn't expecting. I don't know about you guys. I wasn't expecting like full stadium. I was
Mm.
expecting like you see like most MLS teams do, where they just have the tifo rig, have something pull it down. But the fact we did the whole stadium, like I saw us getting posted on like World Soccer Instagram accounts, World Soccer Twitter accounts, with just the picture of the full stadium over the head view with the arch, which is pretty cool to see.
You do it right, baby. You do it right.
Yeah.
The stadium itself, it was beautiful. I know that like we got the opportunity to go to a game a couple of months ago where they got to kind of like test the kinks of how the stadium worked. They did a really great job of interjecting technology throughout the stadium. So got to give a shout out to our boy Matt Seebeck on it. But
Yeah.
the whole stadium is so like customer centered, and like the consumer experience is everything. So their app that they've built themselves, where you can order food ahead of time, you can pick it up at the perfect time of halftime or whenever you want. The Wi-Fi, which like doesn't sound like much, but if you go to sports games, you know that like Wi-Fi doesn't work in stadiums and it doesn't exist in stadiums. It works seamlessly, and the entire place is just, I really feel like, was built for the consumers, for the fans to get the most out of the stadium, which is going to be great for the full family. It's not just
Yeah.
something that if you only are there for soccer, that's the only thing that's going to get you there. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, I take a step into the sports management major that I don't use, and what what they're pulling off is like the intangibles with some of that stuff are the key. So I was sending full videos and texts and pictures and everything out of that stadium immediately. You could get anything you wanted to outside of that stadium immediately. The Wi-Fi was great, so that's something that you can't pay for. You can't pay for more immediate attention around an event that's currently
Mm-hmm.
happening. So that's an intangible. They've got people able to get food at an appropriate time, get in and out of the bathrooms in an appropriate amount of time. That sometimes will drive people from going
Yeah,
to baseball games
yeah,
like
of
that.
course.
That's an intangible.
Mm-hmm.
The way that they set it up, you're right, consumer centric was it was kind of the phrasing that I heard you using it, and it worked so well. And that's exactly what we said when we left the game. We were like, I want to do this again next week. Like I want to do this
Yeah.
immediately again. It was just too easy to be in there and have fun. So
What do you guys think about? And this is something I was thinking about as I was sitting there watching the tifo and then actually like watching the game progress a little bit. Like I think the fact that the stadium only holds like less than 25,000, like I think
yep.
it's almost like the perfect amount to where it's like
Mm-hmm.
we'll probably sell out almost every single game.
Yeah.
And with that, if we continue to like play the way that we have, like nobody sat down that entire game. Like
Mm-mm.
it was talked about everywhere. I listened to Twelman talk about on the broadcast afterwards the fact that for 90 minutes nobody sat down and everybody was loud. To me, it was like the perfect amount of people that you could have in the city of St. Louis to where we'll sell out every single game. And I can honestly, maybe it won't be that exact atmosphere, but it'll be
Mhm.
a tough place for teams to come play for sure.
I think so too. What was immediately like going through my head while we were there was that like the attendance numbers, and it made me think of like, can you imagine being at like Old Trafford where it's like 80,000 or whatever? It's like I
Yeah.
can't even fathom and that many people. You know, even Busch Stadium's like 45,000,
Yeah.
and so I think that the number that we have is perfect for our stadium. And I also think that it's kind of funny, like our city is a soccer city, so like
Yeah.
if refs, you know, to get into the game a little bit, like it was a bloodbath in the first half. You know, there was a lot of tackles, there was a lot of shit talking, there was a lot of guys getting in each other's faces. And when you have a supporter section that's right behind the goal, a lot of our city knows ball. Like a lot of our city, like will get on the ref, will get on the players. I can't imagine that it's going to be an easy place for people to come to, like you said.
Dude, I will tell you right now, the proximity that I personally am and my friends and I seats to the supporters section may be an actual issue because
You
you
mean
guys
the
know,
opposition supporter section?
yeah, the
Yeah.
opposition supporter section. Yeah, so they're up in the 200 section over by me, and you guys know how I am at soccer games in general. I've been to high school soccer games where I think Dobes actually got a yellow on the sideline for something that I said, which was really funny. But yeah, I like to make my voice heard at live sporting events, and man, I was not 5 sections away from the supporter section and from the away fans, and I mean, there were profanities thrown. There those they were rather hostile too, but they were in a hostile environment, so I didn't cut them. You know, there was no slack given, but they were loud and angry, and I credit for that. But like it really was like that was an away atmosphere for them that I don't think a ton of teams are really
Yeah.
gonna want to hang out in. Like
Yeah.
we're a hostile city. People forget that. Yeah, I think that call out is insane. We do know ball. Everyone
Yeah.
played ball at some point,
Yeah.
and the refs heard it. And like when he gave that first yellow card, the whole stadium went nuts. There'd not been
Yeah.
really a ton up until that point to cheer about, and the stadium went. You thought we scored a goal. It was awesome.
We're gonna get to we're like this full season's gonna end, and all of a sudden Hoover's gonna get an email from like St. Louis City SC being like,
Yeah.
hey Andy, we actually switched your seats out with somebody on the other side of the stadium because
Yeah.
we can
You got moved down to the
we can't
100s.
we can't
We heard
trust
that
you
you
over
were a
there.
liability this year.
An absolute liability. What were your guys' thoughts on the game? Like, I mean, I feel like we would miss the opportunity to not talk about like the team and the game itself. We ended up coming away with a 3-1 win over Charlotte, which is huge. Charlotte was an expansion team last year, so it was kind of like an instant, pegging us up against them with the two expansion teams. So, what were your thoughts on the game itself, our style of play? Who's standing out to you?
Go ahead, Hoof.
Well, you know, wins are wins. 3 points are 3 points. I think you maybe want to look at the body of work as a whole on a little bit of it. You can go down to each individual goal and be like, okay, set piece, um, dead giveaway, classy finish, own goal, PK, dead giveaway. So
Mm-hmm.
you look at those and like the national media, and rightly so, I think, has been like once the luck runs out, you know, we're really gonna see what St. Louis is made of. But I do think that the way that they play in that Gegen press or whatever the hell you want to call it style,
Yeah.
that they're, you know, not coining energy drink. They want to turn the ball over high up the field. So I think some of that is a result of they are finding themselves in more situations to that, so that could happen. You know, they've had a combined 3.7 xg or something. I do like to throw that out there. I think sometimes it's worth noting. And then they've scored 6 goals on that. So the goals are there. It's cool. We've not been pushed through any sort of crazy adversity yet, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think. they went down 1-0 to a pretty nice goal from Charlotte, which is fair, and they did fight back really quickly. Like, you could tell evidently that team is here to play, bro. They're not
Mhm.
here to mess around. And I've just followed as many of the players as I could on social media recently, and like they just keep reposting videos. And Tim Parker was even like, he's like, yeah, let's do that again and again and again. Like, these guys love it. So we'll see the true character, I think. In, obviously there's a lot of games left, but the way, the style, the system, they're all bought in. It's very evident to see they're all fighting for it. Whether or not it's sustainable, we're yet to see. But 180 minutes in, boys, we're
2 game
pretty
sample
hot about
size.
it. Yeah, we're
I,
pretty hot about it.
I'm about to do something that like I never thought I'd do. I'm about to talk fucking MLS, folks. Like literally this game to me was almost like second just because of the everything else going on. So the game itself it was a very, like, let's just be honest, it was an average game between both teams. Capetti had a great finish on sort of a little bit of a counterattack against the run of play. So it was a fantastic header. I mean, we kind of talked about him a bunch just after the game and even watching that game. Like, he's a guy that you just absolutely do not want to play against. Like, you could
Mhm.
tell that he got up for that game by riling up the crowd, being that pest, having that little bit of Bruno Fernandez in him where he was going to stay down a little bit. And that finish showed. But I think what's interesting about the City side is from the first game, we played that with just one guy up top and Klaus. In this game, we slid in Giacchini to play like a 4-4-2. That was Indiana couldn't start because he had that concussion go on the last game, to where it almost looked exactly how you'd expect. Like the first 25, 30 minutes, you can almost tell that we were just trying to figure it out. Like, just get
Yeah.
through the game, get through the atmosphere, get through the environment, and just like settle down a little bit. Toward like Hoove, you're right. Like, let's just hit, like, call a spade a spade. The goals, own goals, extremely lucky. I do think it's one of those things where you do make your luck, and we were pressing them to where defender had to get stuck in a difficult situation. The ball in our own net, like that happens. Good teams make that happen.
Giles getting to the ball if he doesn't go up for that.
Yeah,
Like that's
Correct.
landing
Yeah.
at his feet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. And then like you look at the second goal where like clear as day pen, but the pen from Owen was like an absolute peach, like just roofed it top titty going to halftime up 2-1. And then obviously the third goal that was the repeat of last week, but the finish from Klaus was unreal. So it's cool to see sort of Carnell like adjust from one game to another. And I don't think he's found the exact 11. I don't know about you guys, but I would really like to see like a three in the middle with like Lowen, Blom, and Indiana. I think those
Mhm.
three guys sort of can balance each other out. Indiana and Lowen are like good on the ball, and Blom is just that absolute ball winner that he's everywhere. So like just like Hoove said, like we'll take the 3 points, but I still think there's improvement for this team to continue to get better and create more, because I don't think we have our set sort of 11. And I think we're still sort of figuring it out.
Yeah, there's definitely some nerves too. I think in the first half
Oh,
there was,
absolutely.
Yeah.
we praised Blom after the first game about he was what, like Jake pulled it up like 96% passing accuracy in the first game. He gave away like 8 of his first 10 passes of the game. I mean, he turned the ball over a ton, but as the game went on, grew into it. And I think that is also kind of interesting about Klaus and Lowen as well. They didn't like come out the guns blazing. Like they just weren't like that, but they grew into the game so much. I think I said before, or after the first game, that Klaus is going to be someone that I'm either going to love or I'm going to hate. I'm all the way in. I think that he's nasty. I think he's so good. They say that the camera adds 10 pounds, and I think that it's true in his case. When I saw him in person, I was like, that man is a specimen. He's shifty. He's good,
Bro,
but I watch him on
do you
TV
know
and I'm
how
like,
old
he's
he
huge.
is? Do you know how old he
Yeah,
is?
I know how old he is.
He's fucking
25.
26. He's 26 years old.
Yeah, bro.
It's insane.
End of his career.
Yeah, he looks 30, but I think that our guys are growing into the game. What I will be curious about is I actually feel a little bit different, I guess, about Indiana. He was someone that I was really like stoked on because he came through Aston Villa's academy, and granted, again, 2 game sample size, like, and really half a game because he broke his face. But
he came into the game late on the second time. And he had a couple of times where he like broke out with the ball on a counterattack, and it looked like he just didn't really make a decision on what he wanted to do with the ball. Didn't know whether he wanted to go out wide or take the guy on one-on-one. Now, on the opposite hand, he got a couple of like short corners that he took the guy on 2 or 3 times and got 2 or 3 good opportunities out of him. So like he's definitely talented, but I think he has to grow into the game a little bit as well. And then I think towards the end of game 16, out on the left wing, came on. He played like a left wing striker, a big physical, fast guy. Looks about as direct as possible. I don't think that we're going to be seeing a whole lot of flash out of him, but if he can figure out how to push the ball past the player and then like beat him for pace, I think he'll be really scary. But it almost looked like he wanted to like size up the defender, but didn't really commit to taking him on. I think that we, like you guys said, we have a little bit to figure out in our starting 11. I'm still not sold on Berkey. I don't know. He kind of freaks me out a little bit as the keeper.
He's suspect a little bit. He's definitely a little bit suspect. I think the guy that like I'm very confused about still is like Giacchini. Like I'm still very confused on like because I still remember like very like vaguely or watching him play for the U.S. men's national team, getting the call up and being all this hype, not really knowing a lot about him, and not going to sit here and pretend like I've watched a large sample size of him playing in the MLS, but I just like maybe it's just because I've heard his name a bunch that I expected a little bit more out of him. And he's also still young, I believe, but I just think he's one of those that I would have rather seen Klaus up there by himself. Yes, he did create a little bit, was kind of a pest at times, but he's another one where I'm just not necessarily sold at yet to where I think we can make a formation and get another better player on the field. But then again, my sample size with him is small.
Yeah, he in the first half, it was really interesting. I felt like he specifically was working in like opposition of the team. And what I mean by that is in the first 30 minutes of the game, I think he was our standout player. I think the rest of the team just like wasn't super up for it yet, but he made some great runs, was great on the ball. And then after 30 minutes, when the rest of the team grew into the game, he just didn't. He like fell off and he like automatically turned into our weak link. So I don't know. It was really weird. I noticed that too, like during the game that
he's also 22 years old.
Yeah.
Like he's very, very, very young. I think that's a positive where you have someone like that.
Yeah. When we pulled him from that it was like the expansion draft, yeah, I think.
Yeah, from Orlando City.
I think we were watching it, and when we pulled him, and we were all kind of gasped. We'd heard about him. You know, there was a little bit of a buzz. I checked into everything I could possibly find on the kid on YouTube, compilations of anything, and watching him when he's on the U17s at Lille or something like that. And there's moments where you see it, and it's like, wow, that there's some real talent there. And then you couldn't find any other videos or anything of him, and he'd been at Orlando for a little bit, and so 22. I think you definitely have to. It's not fair to not mention that, but when you know the name, it's obviously you set up your own personal expectations, and we're gonna get ruthless with this team in 3 weeks. You know what I mean? Once I know who I want my starting right back to be, I'm gonna be calling for his name every week. So I think too we don't even have Joachim Nielsen in yet. He's our starting center back who has Swedish
somebody
caps.
everybody's high on.
And I think one of the most experienced players and one of our designated players, if I'm not mistaken. And our defenses look really solid, like really, really, really organized. Hebert's done great for what I think's been required of him. He's one of those guys we talked, I think, briefly that I watched him at Missouri State. We were in business classes together. He's my age, and he played, I think, 4 years at Missouri State. Got called up to the City 2 team. I thought that was great. He was one of the best players at Missouri State for sure as well. But I was with Dobes. I was just like, look, man, I don't necessarily see where the skill transitions here. He went from collegiate level to basically a B/C division level of some semi-pro, and then he gets signed immediately out of that group to basically come in and play 100% with the club. So I think that's insane. I think, credit to him. That's an unbelievable meteoric
Yeah, good for him.
rise.
That's great.
And those things don't happen that often. So for him to come in and actually play well next to Parker, who has been nails for the most part, and just you can see him and Berkey and a little bit of Lowe, and those guys are leaders, bro. Like those guys bark the orders, and everyone listens. So to have a hierarchy, to have guys that that are in there while still maybe your best center back's out, that's got to make you feel good in terms of depth for the future.
Of course. Yeah, I love the fact that, and this is again my lack of MLS knowledge, but like if you look at the age range of like our 11 and then the guys that came off the bench, it's like you have Berkey, of course, 32 years old. Goalies last a lot longer than your field players. And then your next oldest player on the field is Parker at 30 years old. And the rest of that squad is like 26, 25. Indiana coming in the game is 22 years old. Perez came in the game who's 17. Like you got to think that they're kind of like planning on some of these guys like continuing to develop, because I still think that for a lot of these guys, like people try to say that like when you get to 25, 26, 27 years old, it's like kind of like where you can peak at your career if you just, you don't get past that stage and get any better. Because oftentimes a lot of these kids are often the best player at their clubs. They get to their early 20s, they make it to the MLS, or they make it playing somewhere else. But the players that kind of develop from here are the ones that can go on to and stay good players. And I think that's kind of interesting to see how Lutz is building this team, not just for now, but also for like years to come with your Indianas and these other players that can develop into being mainstays in the team.
I think we're gonna have to get used to being a selling club. Like we're gonna have to get used to being like a DC, like some of those teams or Dallas, and they kind of just pump out guys. I could very much so see that happening. These guys could be 26, 27, 28, and if a Villa needs a ready to go center back, or a team, somewhere in Sweden like that, well, they'll get picked. They'll get picked.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
we're not a super high destination club, and not many teams in MLS are. But I think you're right. You can't sell the whole squad. The rest of the squad's still 22. But we're gonna. I think in the years to come is obviously way down the road, but years to come, we're gonna see a lot of guys leave here for transfers.
I think that's like my lack of MLS knowledge, because I'm so used to thinking about like United, to where it's like you bring your guys to the youth team, you want them to develop and be able to stay at your club for the majority of their career, like a Kane, like a Rashford. So I just don't understand the MLS model enough, like to know if that's how it works, or if it's like, because it seems to me like it's like from like the Prem perspective, it's like you're at the highest. And so players that are still coming up in the MLS, your 16, 17, 18s, maybe they make some appearances like your Tyler Adams, and you make a move to go over to Europe. So I think that's almost sort of not just like a city model, but maybe like an MLS model right now. Probably what they're trying to get away from, but it's probably just based off of where the best football in the world is. It's kind of what the MLS is right now.
It's got to start somewhere before it comes back.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
for at this point, you want to sell these guys. Be like, we want to be the club in the Western Hemisphere that European teams are coming to be like, hey, I know you guys have some talent. Like, here's $8 million for a youngster who we think's great. And we're like, okay, so that money just has to double back around, and then that comes back to it.
Almiron at Newcastle was from Atlanta United. Caden Clark, who's now over at RB Leipzig. Tyler Adams. We have just like a great, like you said, we have a great amount of people who could be that in the future going elsewhere. I want to ask you guys like a hard question, because I know that we've had a 2-game sample size, but what are your guys' hopes for this season? Like, what do you see as a success? As a fan, what do you want to see? Like, what's your hopes for this season?
I think it more revolves around like this year. Like for me, it's like I want us to win and I want us to be successful, but it's hard to have like expectations really without like having such a large sample size of the team yet, and what the MLS as a whole. But for me, I think it revolves around sort of how we see the team develop, how the guys continue to play together, if we continue to have a mentality, because like Lutz's whole goal has never been to build a team to like win this year. Obviously, yes, we want to, but he wants to build a club. He's always sort of talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is sort of that starting point of for building a club. Do you build that culture? Does that culture build? Does that culture form throughout the season? And I think that for me, if we could continue to win games and be competitive against the good teams and make sort of a see how we get halfway through the season. But I think if you sort of see that like style of play a little bit with that attitude and a culture from the players, I think you consider that a win of a season, at least in my opinion. Now, if we're continuing to play this way and we're halfway through the season, obviously my expectations will just continue to rise.
We win
But
the whole
that's
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But that's just like the way I'm approaching it because I'm still learning.
I think I kind of a piggyback a little, and I think my expectations up until this point were to get to this point. Like how did
exactly.
That's perfect.
how did we
That's
look?
a perfect
How
assessment.
did we look in the first 45 minutes? Decent, fine. Gave up a couple goals, scored a goal. How did we look in the second 45 minutes? Like it's just been so hard to look forward because you're so entrapped and enthralled by what's happening, and then they're still doing it. I think had you asked me prior to the season what my expectation was, it would to be like not last and to not look like shit. Like
Yeah.
I just I want to show up day to day
Exactly.
and play every game tough and look like a solid unit of players that know what they're doing and have a system. I think that was my goal for the season. I think oh, lofty, not even lofty. I think realistic now. I think playoffs. They expanded the playoffs, so there's 2 more teams per conference that get in. There's only like 5 teams or so that don't. I think playoffs is a must. Like
Mm.
I have absolutely nothing to say that playoffs is a must because this is the first year that we've ever played as a club. But I think if you watch 2 games and you see what we've seen and you've seen the city and how diehard everyone is about it, I think a playoff game in St. Louis would be insane.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I don't see why that's not their goal either. Their goal, I'm sure, number 1 was to not look like shit.
Mhm.
They've kind of, to me, solidified that we can not look like shit. I think they've got that down. You're right, Dobes. They just have to develop and progress,
Yeah.
and that's going to determine, check back within me, halfway through the year. But I think playoffs is super realistic for this team, frankly.
This is one of those things where you're almost first season and you're sort of like it goes with that like setting the culture, but like if playoffs are like the worst case scenario every single year, like that's something that you can begin this year. Like, of course, there's going to be downfalls, and you'll hear the coaching staff, and you may hear players be like, "We're still a young team, and we're still developing."
Yeah.
But like, if within the locker room, it's like, "Hey, playoffs are bust," like, are sort of the attitude. Like, I think that is something that like you see sports cultures and like things like the Patriots and
The Cardinals.
exactly the
Mhm.
Cardinals or
Yeah.
organizations form like that. And I think that's like maybe it's an American sports like sort of thinking, but that's also the way that this league is run. And so I think if you sort of set those expectations of playoffs are the expectation every single year, like I think that that's what follows. I'd rather be disappointed in us go for the playoffs than us be rebuilding and all, you know what I mean? All this different stuff.
Yeah.
So I think if we can set that expectation this year, like I think that's a huge and key factor moving forward.
Yeah, I have like 3 hopes for the season, and you guys touched on 2 of them. So my first one is playoffs. I think that, like you said, if you establish a winning culture from the get-go, and no matter who comes in, like no matter if it's a young kid coming in the academy or if it's someone who's transferring in, that you're coming into a winning culture, and I think that that is super important. So making it to the playoffs is number 1. Number 2, I think is having that identity. I think it's an identifiable identity from the fans, from the players, even from the other team, knowing how we're going to play. How many times have we talked about like Arsenal? We know Arsenal's going to have the ball. We know that they're going to like press back immediately when they lose it. We know that Zinchenko's going to go wherever. Like I want to know what I'm looking at by the end of the season. That's what I want out of them. And then finally, the last thing in my hope for the season is we've talked really highly about Lutz up to this point. His job's not over yet. Like he still has like I mean, I guess it's American sports, so a transfer deadline, we'll call it that, or like a trade deadline. That still happens in the MLS too. I want to see what moves he makes in and Coach Carnell make, throughout the season to strengthen our squad, just as we are figuring out if the right back is dog shit or not, or if he's great. I want them to be doing the same, and I want us to make a move, before the deadline's up to really strengthen our squad. So I think those three things happen.
Yeah.
I'm over the moon this first time.
Reactionary moves, I think, is huge, because what do we talk about when we're on the normal pod talking about our English teams? Like, why don't we have a new center back? Like, why don't you're right. That's a great point. I like that.
Every team goes into the season thinking that they're going to be great, but if you can't adjust halfway through, you're not that great.
I think the sort of the icing on the cake, and this doesn't necessarily relate to like on the field, but like I think it would be very cool just at the end of the season to just constantly hear how much teams hate coming to play in St. Louis.
That'd be
like
sick.
I think that's one of those things that and again, learning, but like pipe dream, I think that's kind of what St. Louis is going for in a little bit, because you say we do have that ball knowledge and people do know that it's very easy for us to make, City Park a tough place to play. So I think it'd be awesome if at the end of this season, we're seeing nothing but comments about how teams hate coming to play here because, one, the fans are rowdy, and then two, the players on the field sort of feed off of that. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah. I think that's literally the perfect way to end it. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time. This has been a Mecca Moments. This is, the part of the podcast where we actually get to deep dive into one topic, because we normally don't have the time to do that on the normal pod. So I'm going to invite you to interact with us on all of our social medias, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We're there. You know where to find us. And until then, cheers, gents.
Cheers, lads. Yeah.
See you, fellas.